We Are Both in the Dirt by DeQuena Washington. Chapter 1. Homecoming. The feeling is sudden, that instinctual feeling that crests when it's clear that someone else has entered the room. Whether or not the hairs on the back of the neck stand up, there is nevertheless a quickening in the gut, a hyper-awareness. From the light of her kitchen, she cannot make out much in the darkness that permeates the rest of the penthouse. "Who's there?" she asks, even though she is certain that the broad silhouette she sees is the shadowy form of a ghost from her past. A man she hadn't expected to see so soon. A man she wasn't even sure she would see alive again. She pauses a moment, sips from the glass of wine at her fingertips, and presses her fingers to the countertop to pick up the last granules of coke, which she then spreads across her gums. "Some things never change," he says, as a flame sparks, igniting the cigarette that has rested between his lips since he entered the room. Mira doesn't flinch. "Or maybe they change too much, Mint," Mira says. She takes another sip from her glass. She is unable to calm the shake in her wrist that sends a slight spill of wine over the rim of her glass. She must keep drinking. Maybe if she gets drunk enough, she will be able to deal with this. "I like the ambience you got set up here. The city lights shimmering around you. Look at you, perched atop the world in your penthouse loft," Mint says. He takes a few steps toward her, but avoids the light from the kitchen so that he remains a hulking figure in the dark. "Just like we pictured," Mira says. "Except the fact that you're sharing it with Montana, not with me. By the way, where's the rock? You're not wearing it. I heard it shimmers like the fucking Hope diamond," he says. A faint smile surrounds the cigarette between his lips as he resumes his calm approach in her direction. She stumbles backward when he finally comes into the light. She thinks about the pistol she keeps in a bread box just a few feet away. "You look spooked. My mistake. Usually I'll have the courtesy to call before popping in," he says. "But circumstances being what they are, you know." He then melts back into the darkness to walk the perimeter of the living room. He drops the blinds on each window, toking his cigarette as he goes. "Get on your knees," he says, with his back to her. "Don't lunge for the bread box. You'll find it's empty." "Not there," he says, as she begins to drop to her knees on the kitchen's hard marble floor. "Out here in the living room, on this boss-ass bearskin rug you got in here." She can make him out in the moonlight just barely. She can see a new scar snaking its way out from under the collar of his simple white t-shirt. His hair is longer and curlier than when she saw him last. "This really is a nice place you two have here," he says, with a disdainful smirk. "Montana's gone," she says, "so we haven't got anything. This is mine." Mint clicks on the lights and then comes to stand before her, staring uncertainly at her. Her heartbeat quickens only slightly when he wedges the shotgun between her breasts. That shotgun, Old Faithful itself. Her insides go hot at the memory of it. She especially likes it when there's smoke drifting from its sawed-off, gold-tipped barrel. 5.5 years in prison have turned his eyes dark and wild. She looks into them and takes several deep, calm breaths as he slowly moves the gun to her head. They don't speak for several moments, and she's not sure they need to. She just continues staring at him with a disarming confidence in her own security. She doesn't know exactly why he's come. It could be any number of reasons, but she isn't in a hurry to tell him that he won't find what he's looking for. Not here, at least. Montana's gone, huh? For good? I find that hard to believe, Mint says. Believe it or don't. Makes no difference to me. I don't know where he is, and to be honest, I like it that way, she says. Mint trails the gun down her face, across her lips, brings it to rest between her breasts again. Did you and your little lover try to have me killed while I was on the inside? What makes you think that I would want you dead? Me? After all we've been through together? She asks. There was a time I never would have thought so. But when Maya told me you and Montana had gotten engaged, I realized I must not know the first thing about who you are, Mint says. Immediately, the urge to beat in his face arises in her mind, then dies out, like a floating wave of insanity. She shakes her head. You chose to take Maya's word as gospel. That has nothing to do with me. You rang Maya's phone off the hook for 5.5 years. You didn't write me. You didn't call me. What exactly did you expect? I expected you to have some goddamn self-respect, Mint says. Mira gathers a wad of spit in her mouth, aims her puckered lips at Mint's face, then thinks better of it. She smiles contemptuously as she swallows it down. Going for the jugular, I see, she says. Did you and Montana try to have me killed? He asks, with chilling emphasis. He no longer wears even the slightest smile, and his wild eyes have become mere narrow slits in his angular face. I already gave you your answer, she says. Now what? You going to shoot me, or is all this just foreplay? Mint can tell she's being truthful. Her confident manner, her elegant movements, her soft eyes, even through the harshest words, all conspire to dissolve any hatred he felt toward her before entering her apartment. Her sincerity erodes his steely demeanor, like the river erodes the massive stones that become pebbles under its current. He leans forward, gathers her into his arms, and kisses her. His gun clatters to the floor, and he's a mess. He is not crying exactly, but he seems to lose himself as he runs his hands through her hair again and again and smothers his face into her breasts. God, I've missed you, Mira. You've got a funny way of showing it, she says, with a bit of a laugh, as her nerves finally get a chance to relax enough to savor his return. She is furious at what he has just put her through, yet she clings to him, even so. They stay that way for a while. She doesn't stop him when he slides her robe from her shoulders to kiss her bare breasts, softly at first, and then with uncharacteristic eagerness, no doubt born of his years behind bars. What happened to your arm? She asks, when her hand runs across a wet bandage. She pulls away, and she sees the blood on her hands. Mint, how long have you been bleeding like this? It was okay before I got here, he says. She notices how sweaty he's become, pale as well. She helps him sit down and goes into the bathroom to retrieve a bandage, gauze, and neosporin. Fuck, he screams. when she splashes his wound with a shot of vodka. She uses the gauze to dry the wound. It's a flesh wound, at least. How did this happen? She asks, as she bandages the angry red gash. It was Maya. I was going home to her. As soon as I walked into the place, I had to dodge a shot that would have put me 6 feet underground, Mint says. She was aiming for the kill, huh? Mm-hmm. Right between the eyes. She's short, you know. If it didn't kill me, it probably would have gone in at just the right angle so as to make me a vegetable, turn me socially inept and disfigured, Mint says. A little late to worry about that, she jokes, hoping to pull a smile out of him. When it comes, she is able to relax completely. They are both quiet for a while as she holds ice to his wound, her thumb caressing the blemish-free skin of his lean bicep. Why did she try to kill you anyway? Mira asks. She lifts the bandage and is relieved to see that the bleeding has stopped. You were always good with patching us up, he says. She found the letter. That's why she shot at me, Mint says. Wow, how could you fuck up this bad? Mira asks with a nervous chuckle. Her mind races. You know I'm a hopeless romantic. I put it in the barrel of my sawed-off. Who would have thought she'd look there? I can't say I'm surprised. Maya is an exceptional brand of jealous. The moment your ass got locked up, she went through everything you had to find proof of all the cheating she thought you were doing, Mira says. The cheating she thought you and I were doing, you mean? More or less. So, what happened? Where's Maya now? She asks. Dead. Well, I guess that's a start, she says. Chapter 2. Lost and Found. Mint sticks the nose of a shovel into a patch of sand and wipes the sweat off his face with his bandana. He shields his eyes from the sun and takes a quick break from digging to watch Mira staring into her phone. He holds back several vulgar remarks about how her body has changed in all the right ways during his 5.5-year stint in the penitentiary. She wouldn't want to hear it anyway. He knows this. He knows it as well as he knows every mark and scar that dare grace her otherwise flawless skin. You know, I've always liked digging holes, he says. He keeps his eyes on her as he gets back to digging. I'm pretty sure you've told me that before, she eventually replies, absent-mindedly. I feel like I've told you a lot about me, he says. And I've told you next to nothing about me. Is that what you're about to say? She doesn't need to tell him anything about herself. He knows her through and through. No, he says. Just that you should consider yourself lucky. Most women would kill to have a guy like me, sharing with them all his private thoughts and secrets. When she doesn't respond with the chuckle he was aiming for, he shifts the angle of his digging, this time facing away from Mira, so that she might not be able to glean anything from the disappointment that must be all over his face. You haven't told me about your finding religion. What do you know about my faith? Maya told me you became a Jesus freak in prison, she says, instantly regretting having mentioned anything personal about his incarceration. Maya would say that. So you two talked often while I was away? He asks, changing the subject. We did, early on. It's been a while, though, she says. A long pause stretches between them before Mint clears his throat and asks, How much longer before I reach it? I'd say if you don't get to it in the next 15 minutes, dig a little to the left, she says, still staring into her phone. After 2 lefts and a right, he finally hits a metal box. As he lifts it from its sandy grave, he is taken aback by its shiny, unblemished exterior. Mira stands silently behind him as he thumbs in the combination on the lockbox and pops the top to behold stack after stack of red-banded banknotes. "It's all here," he says, after counting it twice. "Of course it is," she says, smiling with pride as she slips her phone into her pocket. "Well, to be honest, I wasn't so sure it would be," Mint says. "Oh yeah, ye of little faith," Mira says, betraying a giddy satisfaction with herself. Leaving this money buried was the one thing she could do for her old friend. She is immensely pleased with herself in being able to prove that he was wrong to ever doubt her. "You have no idea how many times I've thought about driving out here to dig this up." "Well, Maya told me you'd revived your coke habit," Mint says, "and unfortunately, after last night, I see that it's true, so you can't really blame me for wondering." Mira pulls her phone back out of her pocket and climbs into the car. "Glad I could give you two something to talk about," she says. He pops open the passenger side door and passes the lockbox over Mira and into the back seat. "That's all you have to say about it?" he asks. "About what?" she answers, without looking up from her phone. She had promised him that she was done with the cocaine, and she had always kept her promises to him. This exception, however, came as a great disappointment to Mint, and she knew it. After all, he had already saved her life once before after an overdose years earlier. "Never mind," he finally replies. He walks around to the driver's side of the car, gets in, and drives like a bat out of hell toward the road, creating an enormous cloud of sand in their wake. "I've always loved the desert," Mira says. "Not surprising. Evil is always attracted to hot, desolate places," Mint says. "Only a Jesus freak would say something like that," she replies. He can't help himself from smiling at this. She isn't entirely wrong. Prison is a pressure cooker. Years behind bars can make people do strange things. Anything that helps sap the anxiety and loneliness is a welcome retreat. Jesus wasn't the worst thing he could have turned to in there. "It's okay if you're crazy for Jesus," Mira says. "Yeah, right. You know you hate zealotry." "Are you a zealot?" she asks. "No, I don't suppose I am." "Then we're good," Mira says. She turns away from him to stare out the window. She rubs her delicate hand along the glass. She has always harbored a strange fascination with shiny things, cool, hard surfaces. When he first met her, she was living in a high-rise in Vegas with stainless steel floors, glass tables and chairs, walls of mirrors, everything shiny, but cold, hard, and sharp. He once joked that her apartment looked like an emergency operating room. It was certainly as inviting as one. "Well, I'm glad you don't mind that Jesus is my homeboy now," Mint says. He rolls the windows down, and they drive in silence for a while. Mira puts her hand on his legs, and he flinches away from her. It is an instinctive reaction, rather than a conscious rejection of her touch, which he craves even more than the contents of the lockbox in the back seat. Neither of them mention it. "No, I don't mind. When a person saves you from overdosing face down on a couch, you kind of give them a free pass from then on," she says, avoiding his gaze. "Free pass?" I wasn't aware such a high honor had been bestowed upon me. You know, I'm surprised you didn't get your ass beat in prison, with all that smart college boy vernacular, she says. And I'm surprised you aren't tied up in a closet somewhere with Montana semen drying between your legs, he says. She flinches at this last blow. Her discomfort seems to bring him a peculiar kind of pleasure. She deserves it, even if she hadn't touched his money. She reminds herself again not to bring up anything about his life behind bars. The silence that follows is the perfect repose from digging deeper into the festering wounds they've inflicted upon each other. There will be other opportunities later on to rip them back open again, and they are both certain that they will avail themselves of those opportunities. They always do.